The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spent a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
Aloha everyone, I am geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont of HawaiiTracker.com, bringing you guys another Kilauea eruption update today, Thursday, October 28th, 2021. In short, there's not a whole lot of change going on, but we'll detail that for you guys. Dane will be taking questions in the chat and manning our streams, so he'll answer what he can in the chat and collect some for us to discuss along the way as well, and feel free to break in, Dane, as you see fit. Let us know if you have any issues with our audio or video, that kind of thing as well. And we will get going here. We're going to bring you guys a little bit of a shorter update today. There's not a whole lot changing. There are a few changes around the lava lake, minor things, the vent a little bit. But it's also 30 days into this eruption. Tomorrow marks 1 month calendar since September 29th, when eruption began at 3:21 p.m. Hawaiian time. So as part of the content we want to bring you guys, we're going to share in a couple parts here. First, a little preview of a video Dane put together, compiling all the USGS footage that's been released over the past month. You can get a little flashback view here, one month rewind of what's been going on with Kilauea's volcano. So we'll play the longer cut of this after our mid-ad break here, but just so you guys can have the context of where we are 1 month into this eruption. Here's the highlights of 1 month of videos put out by the USGS. And we'll look at a couple of these, like this more recent one. little earlier than the others. So, all right, we'll leave that second part for later here. So as far as what's going on in Kilauea here, this is our view from our current S1 camera, just to get a last 24-hour idea of what's been happening. Our Wes Events over here. Oh, and it wants to give me text all of a sudden, and I don't want that. What's going on with my screen drawer all of a sudden? Just a second here. Get this thing back under control. And there is my Wes Event right over there. So it's putting out lava into the lava lake, which is open in this area all through here. There's this northeast branch right over here, and then there's a south branch right over here that seem to remain active apart from this main oval of the lava lake right in there. So that's the pattern we've had for a while now. It's maybe been a week and a half, 2 weeks without a whole lot of change. We have minor changes around the vent and on the margins of these things, but that's kind of just for those of us that like to microanalyze these images and get nerdy about it there. So really, in the grand scheme of things, there's no change in the threat. There's no huge buildup of lava. There's no indication that this eruption is going to move anywhere else. It's still safe within Hawaiʻi Volcanoes National Park. It's still something that people can go and visit and enjoy. From various overlooks. You actually can go to the hardest overlook to get to, Kanakakoi. You can actually see the lava fountain. So that's a pretty unique situation for us to have here. So really appreciate everyone who's sharing to our Hawaii Tracker groups all their images and sharing their experiences, because that's really what it's all about, is our community sharing and communicating with each other, and we're just trying to give some narration and context to all of that.
Yeah, definitely. And there's been some amazing shots. I know Harry's had some, Heidi's has some, Warren. There's just a bunch of really talented photographers that put up all their latest content. Apparently, Harry Durgan went up there and had the whole south side of the caldera to himself last night. He was saying nobody was there. Yeah.
If you're willing to wait long enough, or get early enough, or stay late enough, there are some very special moments to be had there for sure. So yeah, it's really magical, and there's no other way to understand that apart from going yourself, right? So I've tried to go as much as possible myself, but of course there's a lot of other obligations. I can't share absolutely every time that I go, but yeah, definitely if you have a chance, you should try to go and see it. It's changing all the time. One thing we've heard reported is that the lava fountains aren't quite as high, but they're still visible, and it's probably because that whole cone and lava fountain is all erupting through the lake, and it's all getting lifted up as that lava fills underneath that crust. So we'll look at that briefly here shortly as well. Let's advance here to our thermal camera, the F1 camera, courtesy of the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, as always. And once again, the last 24 hours, just so you can see, there's been a pattern of flow out from this Wes Event, and you can't really see the circulation as easily with this interval of every 1 hour of images. But you see that there is movement of lava in these directions there and there, and it's still going underneath the crust. And you can see that towards the end of this sequence, there's a spillover that occurs both at this northwest gap and at this more western gap right over here. Right, that's just outboard of our remains of our previous Wes Event that was active during our December 2020 to May 2021 eruption right there. And that's what this big massive land actually is. And if you watch it, you can see a little bit of jerky as the animation loops from 24 hours back and forth there, and that's something we'll look at as well. That this is actually a piece of land that's moving. You can't tell as easily in 24 hours, but thanks to Dane and Bob Martin collecting images and compiling them, we'll be able to show you guys a little bit better of that sequence right there. The other thing to note is that around a perimeter, you can see over here is some flows along the edge, right? And this might be a flow from somewhere else, you can't quite tell. But all these flows are separated from this main circulating body. So this is what we'd call those ooze-up flows. The USGS has called it ooze-up flows during the last eruption. And it appears that lava is moving not just in this active crust, but underneath this inactive crust all over here, and is squeezing up along the perimeter right there. And that's something you'd expect as this whole plug is lifting upwards, and there's a gap that forms there. Lava kind of leak out and ooze out and fill in that area. And that's how come this backside is still able to rise in sync with this front side, even though it is still tilted down in that direction, and it seems to be quite a bit lower over here. Still, that pattern still exists. So not a whole lot of change there, but I just wanted to show you guys these general patterns that are happening now. And you can see this, maybe a slight little surge or something spells out up there and down here at the same time. Here, if I scroll up here, you can see this image taken about an hour and a half ago is caught right in the middle of that sequence right there. Spillovers on over here and over here. Okay, so we're interested in a few things of why that might be the case. So we'll look first at this deformation data over the last 2 days. And let me get my color a little darker here. And let me reload it to the most recent frame here. We might get a slightly more wiggles, right? So, okay, you can see here that since about noon, we've had a slight deflation registering on a summit tilt meter. And I say slight because our scale here is from 0.4 to negative 0.5. The whole thing is 1 microradian. That's really not a whole lot. So we're really dropping just a few tenths of microradian. That's barely anything. But it is a trend that's downwards, and it's a little different than we had previously here, right? You can see there's been lots of ups and downs, especially if you go out to the past week. You can see that our current downward trend here, and it follows a whole bunch of wild ups and downs here that you see on the tilt meter as well. That come in here on the middle of the 26th, coming through the middle of the 27th or so before things seem to stabilize right there. That's what's going on. So it could be, and one of our Hawaii tracker members, Les Peterson, pointed out this might be synchronous that this deflationary trend begins when we see that little surge coming out. So it's quite possible we have a similar kind of surging. It's possible we have pulsing. We don't really have the timescale data to really see that, but those are processes we know have occurred at these eruptions before. And so there may be signs of them being expressed here. And so that's a tilt that we have. If we go back to the past month, you really see that the overall pattern was, since we are at the 1 month, just shy of 1 month, we get to see the full month of data here. Build up to the eruption, coming up here, and then the release when the lava is actually emitting outwards. This was that 6.2 earthquake, which occurred just after this thing turned flat. And it's been flat and wiggling up and down essentially since then. Right? So that was back on the 10th. And today's the 28th, so that's 18 days, 2.5 weeks or so, right? And you see it overall very, very small wiggles. And really, if anything, we may have seen this tilt trend possibly start to rise slightly in this last week or so, but very, very, very slightly, if at all, right? You can see that if I zoom out, this is really the rise right here from minus 0.5 to plus 1.5 microradians isn't a whole lot. So very minor changes there. The GPS is continuing a trend we saw last week. So this is the last 2 weeks or so. We really see that the distance north and south across the caldera has been extending, following that about 2 weeks after the beginning of the eruption, where things were still relaxing as it was essentially exhaling. And so this is a dynamic we've seen before. If I can scroll back, this is actually the last year. So we can go back to January 2021, and before that to December 2020, our last eruption. And it had a similar pattern where for about 1 week, it was doing that exhale, deflating, and then the north vent drowned. And then the west vent, even though it was being drowned as well, was able to erupt for much longer. But throughout that whole time, we saw extension of the caldera from north to south. So it was essentially swelling beneath the lava lake. When it erupted, it started to exhale, but now it's resumed that swelling. Very slow swelling, nothing alarming. It's not anything near the rates we're seeing before here. Very, very slow, but swelling nonetheless, which means that perhaps you're not getting as much lava out as you'd like to, right? Maybe because of this vent configuration, the lava lake reaching a certain depth, or you're losing a lot of your gas early on, or, those are all interesting processes which we can just speculate at, but we really don't have any answer of the exact details there. So that's a deformation trend in the GPS, and we won't go any further than that. Still contraction in the east rift zone at Pu'o'o and beyond, so nothing to worry about there. Looking at the actual depth of the lava over the past week here, we can see that we've generally been rising, and we had an interesting wiggle here. Between about midday on the 26th and midday on the 27th, before things stabilize. It mirrors our interesting inflationary signal there. So it's interesting to think about what this might have actually been. This may have been some actual pressure of a little extra surge of lava coming out perhaps, and or something like that is one possibility, seeing as we see it not only on the depth plot but also up here on a tilt. Interesting signals there as well. Otherwise, we can be skeptical of lots of these other little wiggles because we know that the lava lake is rising, and bits of islets might drift across, and the laser's been repositioned before, and in fact we don't exactly know where this thing is pointing on a lava lake, and the lava lake is getting a lot more topography now. So there's always a possibility of that, but it seems like it may have been some little pulse, right, that we saw. Interesting that it came up and then dropped back down again, similar to what we saw in a tilt, which is suggestive of that gas pistoning effect, right? That, after the gas bubble that's built up, some pressure below is able to rise and lift everything up and essentially burp out, then that plug above it can drop back down into place. And so that's what that looks like here, rather than a giant surge that just brought a bunch of lava in and then just filled it up and it's been sitting there ever since. It looked like whatever came up, it pushed it up, was able to release, and then it dropped back down to that base level. So it's interesting to see that. If that's the case, you have slightly different patterns of gas venting, if that is actually the case there. And looking back at our tilt, right, the scale of the signal, half microradian, is certainly consistent with that kind of gas pistoning effect. So that would be my guess, just a guess. In any case, it turned out to not be consequential. It seems like whatever went up, it came back down and did it a couple more times, and really whatever extra gas it had right in there seems to have been cleared, for as we can evidently see here. So the lake depth is still rising. We're hitting 277.5. We're getting pretty close to that level where we think that the lava should be spilling out onto that lower ledge on the northeast part of the crater. That's not exactly easy to predict because the surface isn't even, it's tilted, and not only that, we have perched edges in the lava lake, and so we'll look at that part of the process here next. So let me just go to that next, since I just said that. And here is a B1 camera, and this is a compilation of just the daytime views. And I'm just gonna very quickly drag this back and forth for you guys, so you can really see how from this angle, even though we're looking primarily at this mostly crusted surface right over here, the active lava is coming out of the Wes Event back here, and it's flowing, and that's that south branch, and that northeast branch goes like this. That's the whole active lava area, and this view is just like this, and maybe as far as down here, something like that, right? So you can see that all the stuff in the bottom right is coming up, and it's coming up being lifted from below. And so I can really see pretty well here. And if I pull it back a little bit, let's see if this works, and zoom into this corner where we think it's going to come down, we can see this little gas vent right in here getting slowly covered by the lava. And that's as much as we actually have evidence of the thing rising up. Oh, it cycled back through, so yeah, let's just keep it zoomed into that area. You can see there's that gas vent right there. Or no, I'm sorry, right here. And at the very, very end of the frame here, you actually see it gets all the way buried and covered up. One last little blob right in there. So it hasn't quite spilled over onto this upper ledge, but it's getting pretty close right in there. That's the best we can show you as far as how that looks right now. We can look at the last 24 hours animation, showing a night view. It does really wash out anything that's bright with the lava in a background over here. But if we do zoom into this front little corner, we can see that there are some spots of glow, and this is that ooze-up flows we're talking about occurring at the margin here. You can see some back here, along this rim all through here. Those are the ooze-up flows that we're talking about coming up between this rising crust that's acting like a piston head and the gap between it and the crater wall back over here. So it's coming up, ooze-ups, and you can see it's starting to lap up on the edge, but it hasn't on this view that we can see actually spilled out over this area quite yet. So you can't quite see that yet. There is some other views. Here's a view from the KW camera. Let me reload it see if we can get anything better. And zoom it way in there. And you can see this is the back edge right over here that we're talking about. You can still see a little bit of cliff right through there. It's not the best lighting in this image, but there's still visible several pixels of cliff right in there. So it looks like it's getting there, and it may be that, this part right here is the eastern portion that's about the same height as that, but there's a little gap down in between there that's preventing that lava from spilling out directly quite yet. And that's that trench back here. So last 24 hours animation of the KW camera. You can see Wes Event at the bottom now. And once again, northeast branch, south branch right over there. Erupts along the perimeter right over here. And we're likely looking at this zone right in here as that spill up spot. And maybe now, maybe if I zoom it in, maybe now I can show you that back gap cliff right there and some of the better lighting over the past 24 hours. You can see that there's still a little bit right in there. So hopefully you guys can see that. And I will move on from that to show you guys a couple videos that are recently released of the Wes event itself. So this one's a animation, 5x speed, taken October 12th, I believe. And you can see there's that lava fountain. It's mostly within that horseshoe-shaped spatter cone right now. We're not seeing quite as many bursts that are higher coming up and above. You know, those were episodic before, and they seem to be mentioned by the USGS as occurring less frequently. And that seems to be the case of all the footage I've seen coming out over the last few days. Perhaps the last week or so, maybe not quite a week. So last few days for sure, lower fountains, but that, as we said before, is because this whole surface is rising up and now the lava fountain is erupting through more lava to reach that height, right? So from the base upwards, it's not reaching quite as high. So there's animation. You see in the daytime, you really just see the entry point coming in, and it varies over time. I'll zoom it in here. In this case, you can see mostly crusted over rest of the lake. Everywhere else, there and there and there, it is moving. It's just moving underneath that very thin skin of rock that's forming against the atmosphere where the heat can escape. And so that's the time lapse from USGS there. I will maybe pause that one there and move on and show you guys some similar views, but not sped up here in real time of that fountain and that plunge point, right? What you can't exactly see from this angle where the USGS is standing is that there's actually a perched block right over here. And so most of the lava is ponding up in here through this fountain, and then there's a small fall that drops down about that far there, right? And so if we've seen estimates that this cone might be perhaps 20 meters high or so, 25 meters high, or maybe it's 85 feet or so, then I don't know, it's definitely not half, it's maybe a quarter-ish of that height, quarter to a third of that height from there to there. It's dropping down, it's actually lava fall. And so that, I don't know what's 20 feet, maybe 25 feet. It's a significant little drop down zone here where lava's falling out. And everything is really hard to get perspective, right? Because there's no person standing there to show you how big a person would be, right? So, if this 85 feet would be an 8-story building on there, right? So in comparison, a person, if someone's asked them, I'm just going to very quickly wing this, there might be a person size, something like that, just for some very, very rough reference. Okay, so that's that's one of those views, and we can, there's another video that's zoomed in a little bit more from the next day, where you can see a little easier this upper pooled pond of lava up here by the vent, right? You can see it's in this video pooled quite a bit higher. As you can imagine, the lava is definitely bubbling the whole thing, but it's not able to shoot up and above this cone as much as it was before. So a different dynamic and character there, as we've been seeing evolving as the lava level has been rising higher, as we'd expected with that Wes Event. All right, so let me go back now to this one, which is our longer thermal time lapse. And we'll just play you guys to start here the last couple of days, so you can see that circulation pattern in a thermal view as well. West vent down here, and there once again, northeast branch and south branch right over there. Erupts coming up along the back at the very end right over here. All right, so what I want to do now is drag it faster so you guys can see, and maybe I'll zoom it in a little bit, and let's focus on a vent to start here. And so just so you can see, the vent has been coming up and growing as well. And you can see that, if anything, it's growing outwards. Let's make my highlighter yellow here. It's growing outwards into the lake a little bit, right? Maybe it seems like this edge is progressing outwards, so it's interesting that might be coming from below. We're not seeing lava spattering over the top onto this thing, so it's pushing out from below. And this whole mass is rising, similar to what we saw this other Wes Event Island mass rise over here, this thing. And at one point, there actually is a secondary flow that breaks out apparently from the base of this vent over here on the south side. There are also overflows that occur from the lake that spill over into this trench from above, but there seems to be a different event here. Let's see if we can find it in our animation. If I go back to last week there, I think that's the tail end of it there. And yeah, right there. And there it is. You can see it seems like it breaks out and goes off that way. And there's a pattern of flow and of cooling that we see right in there. So it's a minor change, but we know lava before popped out on this side through the base of the spatter and cinder cone, and we can see that the whole material is weak and moving and getting pushed up and around, maybe getting pushed outwards over here. Maybe lava is able to push through it a little bit over here until it plugs that hole with some hardened lava, and the whole thing is rising and filling this pond over here to the side. So that's more or less a view. You see no real big fountains evident here either. So let's pull it back, and I would like to zoom in on, see if I can. We'll look at this, let's zoom into this section right over here. So this gap between this rising West Island and this other mass that's further to the north. This is an area that's been blocked off, and we saw a chunk of that blockage get washed through lava overflow, and that's what's remaining right over here is this high point, and this purplish area is actually like a small lava pond that's off to the side, right? It's like an overflow pond. Lava overflows from this spot into over here, and it's been cooling and gathering, and so it seems like you do see this crust overturning process. There's enough lava in there that it's essentially acting as a separate little body. And that's one of those little nuances, right? And occasionally it's getting refreshed with new lava coming into it. But you can see here at the very end of this sequence that we've restored, once again, this barrier, right? And so that's an interesting thing to see, this barrier changing over time. And so I can't quite zoom it in as much as I want and manipulate the time here, but I'll do it there. You can see it looks almost like the two paddles of a pinball machine, flapping, moving apart and together like that. Let's see if you can see that, and I'll see if I can zoom it in any further. There. Right there to the left edge of that image, the pinball kind of gathering together, right? The paddles joining there. And if you look closely while I'm doing the same sequence here, you might notice this western edge of this old Wes Event Island seems to also be rising. This part seems to be rising faster than this part, right? So it's almost like this thing is getting pushed and tipped and tilted over a little bit this direction. Let me pull back and do it again so you can see. Right in there. So as that pinball paddle moves, you see that whole base of the thing is wiggling, right? And not a whole lot of change on that right side, apart from it maybe rising and tilting a little bit. Its shape isn't changing a whole lot. We do see that interesting push-up coming through here. And as well, this piece of land is getting pushed up from below, rising out of the lake as well to actually go and join those two paddles and block it off, right? You can see that it kind of rises and parks itself right in the middle at the end there. So that's one of the more interesting areas to look at right there, is that little overflow point. And if this was 100 years ago and Thomas Jagger, this might have some other name, right? They had, the North Pond and the South Pond, the Central Pond, the West Pond, these all kinds of different ponds. So, maybe we'll get a name for this little feature at some point as well if it persists. Right? So that's pretty cool. There is this kind of a bay-looking thing over here at the end of this northern arm of flow, right? And lava isn't just flowing here and just stopping; it's diving underneath this crust, and that's likely what's pushing up and oozing up out elsewhere on the edge over here. But as the lava is going underneath here and pushing it up, this whole area is rising up as well. And actually lava is receding away from that shoreline because it's essentially rising out of the liquid right there, which is kind of a fascinating thing to consider. So let's pull that back and show you guys that as well. There's the earlier days, and I'm going to have to zoom it out a little more for this one. You can see the lava lapping all the way up to the edge. And now I'm going to fast forward it. So you can see a lot less of that character in the upper parts here at the end in the recent week or so. That's how it looks in the northern branch, and you have a similar thing on the southern branch, although it's farther away from the camera. You still have this area of activity over here, but you don't really see that secondary flow to that furthest southeast corner of the crater quite as much as you did before. Maybe once in a while, but mostly it's hanging out along the southern edge more so than coming around to that far side. So maybe it's something I can rewind and show you guys a little more as well. There's some of those bigger ones from a couple weeks ago. And really less and less receding closer and closer and closer. Right? So really everything is rising, and that's why I wanted to show you guys once again that we got to pull it back, that B1 camera view that had the whole solid crust rising in plain view and plain light. So those are the details of our F1 camera thermal. I'll leave it at that, and we can get questions. We can go to things further, but I think that's enough of a deep dive for today. And we will advance to look at the most recent USGS update here. So update today. They are noting that there is still 2,600 tons of SO2 coming out, so it's a lot lower than before. It's not low enough to consider the eruption to be ending anytime in the next few days or anything like that. So it seems to be hit some stability, I suppose, right? Because it's been in that 3,000 to 5,000 range for a while now, and it's dropping off a little bit with some variations. The variations may be similar to what you were seeing with the gas pistoning or possible deflation inflation cycles, but overall it's still in that range and not dropping off very quickly. So really there's no sign of this ending very soon. It seems to be tailing off slowly like the last eruption did just less than a year ago. No significant changes noted here. They're showing that so far, so they actually have an elevation measured on October 27th, that was yesterday, and it's been coming up about 1 meter per day or so, right? Total increase of 50 meters, 164 feet since the 29th of September. And that's added on top of the 750 feet that we had for the previous eruption before, right? So that's why we're coming up to the edge of that rim on that northeast part of the crater. And that's really only the innermost rim. It kind of flares out from there, then you get a bunch more space. Then it flares out from there again. And then you finally flares out at the most. The caldera, I can't even get my arms on the camera enough because there's so much space for it to spill over within that crater before it has to go anywhere else outside of that crater and affect anything, even in a national park, right? So that's where we look at the deformation signals, things like GPS and tilt and earthquakes for signs of subsurface movement, which we are not seeing a whole lot of right now. Just that kind of slow swelling buildup underneath the lava lake. All right, so there's not a whole lot of news in today's daily update, but I won't pull it up. But there have been some of the other updates earlier in the week that have noted things like the sparsity of the decrease in those larger bursts from the Wes Event, for example. Instead, we'll look at that data, look at the earthquakes to start. Here's the last month, so we actually get this beginning of the eruptions signal here at the very, very far left, 168 earthquakes per day. And we've been in a range of about 40 or less for a long, long time. So this is our new during eruption baseline. Just keep in mind that in a couple of days when this peak scrolls off the side, the graph will rescale, and it'll go from 0 to 80. And so it's going to look like you have a whole bunch of big ones over here, and then some small ones, and some little ones, and some bigger ones, and some bigger ones, and some bigger ones. And just to keep that in mind, the scale is going to change once this scrolls off the side. And this is really the context to keep in mind here, is that 160 per day is what it took to begin this eruption. And so that's the last month. And looking on map view here, you can see the last week of earthquakes. Still steady under the south flank, no change there. But really, not a whole lot anywhere else. A couple here, a couple there, but this is what I'd consider background almost at this point. Right? Hardly any earthquakes at all. still happening down in Pahala area. That's still unconnected to what's happening at the surface of Kilauea. Okay, so that's the earthquakes there, and I did want to bring up the past year of earthquakes. Let's see if I can get that here. Requires a little tricking of the browser to get to the right links to show up here. And well, a lot of earthquakes over the last year. And here's what I want to get at is these earthquake rates and depth for the past year. Just to point out the parallels here, we actually had our previous eruption having high values as it began and then tailing off for a long time. And then that slowly increased as eruption got closer to ending. And then once it actually ended, then it jumped up and found a new base level. Then we had intrusions and then eruptions later on, right? Similar to intrusions and then eruptions later on, pattern as we had before. So there's our most recent eruption and our new base level paralleling this section right there, paralleling what we see back over here. Okay, so gas is what we talk about next. Here's a plot of gas for the last month. Let's zoom it in somewhat. There's 1.85,000 tons hiding behind this label back over here, and that's what's scaling the graph so high. This is times 10 to the 5th tons per day going on over here. So this is 85,000 tons, dropped off to 20,000, dropped off to the tens, thousands, and then we're back in this 5,000 or less range ever since, with some little variations, you know, and they're not measuring gas every single day or every single hour of the day, right? But you see some little variations visible there as well. And you can see here towards the right, not a lot of visible variation as well. And once again, we're victims of the scale here. And once again, once this scales off to the side, scrolls off to the side here, then we'll get a lot more perspective. Our scale will probably go back to 30,000 tons per day or something. So we'll be able to see this decrease a lot more in a lot more detail next week when we do our update here. And likewise, these little variations will be more evident as well. But really small changes, nothing noteworthy there. Using gas as a proxy for lava rate, you can see it's clearly dropped off a lot since the beginning, but it's still going steady at a stable rate. As far as ambient gas, in the past month, you can see the pattern has been that of decreasing. It was a lot more in that first week and a half of eruption or so than it's been in the last few, but it's still reaching detectable levels of 6, 4, 2 ppm at various locations in a national park, downwind of the summit along the southwest rift for the most part. So this will likely need to be reloaded. This page never likes to be in a tab. So here we go, Hawaii air quality data. And it's showing green everywhere, but some non-zero values. And we like to look at this because we can get SO2 history for somewhere like Pahala. And even though it's green today, we can see that it was actually yellow earlier today. And we can scroll back and see that it's been yellow yesterday. And the day before was actually up into the orange on the 26th. And the day before that, it was in the green entirely. So very variable. The day before that, it was in the orange. The day before that, in the green. The day before that, in the yellow. That's the whole last week. And so, just one green point right now doesn't tell the whole story. That's why I wanted to kind of scroll through that closest station right there. And, you know, there's a way to, maybe I can show you guys this. You click on this, go to station info. You can go to the graphing, and you can actually get a really badly scaled plot here, right? But it actually can scale over it. And we're looking at PM 2.5. Let's look at SO2. And we can see that we're up at 0.07 ppm SO2 today, right? And we've seen it up to 1 or more at this station, which is, I believe, at the school, if not close to the school, right there. Okay, so that's the Hawaii air quality data, and of course, it's only with those public monitors. But we also have a community science network through Purple Air of reporters of air quality data here. And so you can see that there is still measurable, not as bad as last week, still measurable VOG in a particular range, especially along the South Kona and Kona coast over there, right? And interestingly, these two maps complement each other because there's not a lot of coverage right through here. Okay, our VOG model from University of Hawaii. Less output coming out, but still affecting the same areas. This looks familiar as before. South Hawaii and then wrapping around to South Kona as well. And the national park continues to be clear, green across all the stations all day. So if you're going to visit the national park to get a view of the eruption, certainly be prepared for bad gas, but there has not been any bad gas for a while in the public viewing areas. Okay, that brings us to our midpoint, Dane. And we'll do pictures and a little bit more of the video that Dane put together after that.
Yeah, we'll go through that. We do want to first give some shout outs and thank yous. People that help keep this entertainment coming, or this informational program coming, is the viewers like you that like, subscribe, share this video and the videos that we also do and release. That really helps us continue to make this type of content. We also do take monetary donations if you are so inclined on hawaiitracker.com/support. hawaiitracker.com is where we post the majority of our content, all in chronological order, so you can go in there and find what the newest release is quite easily without having to search through Facebook or the other social media feeds. So yeah, check us out on hawaiitracker.com. We do have a couple of supporters that we do want to acknowledge. First one is Kilauea's Bar and Grill in the heart of Pahoa, and their newly established location in Orchid Land. They have two great restaurants. They offer two unique twists on some local dishes and some traditional dishes. They also have different menus between them. And if you are in the industry, they are hiring from cooks to the service staff. Everybody they're hiring, just trying to fill out that new establishment. So thank you, Kilauea's Bar and Grill, for the continued support. The second one is Kalani Tours out of Kona, and they offer a few different kinds of tours, including waterfall and Kona Coffee Farm tours. But probably the one that they're doing the most of right now is the volcano tours, because it's so rare to be able to see the active eruption inside Halemaumau and be able to see those fountains firsthand, and do it pretty easily too. It's not like it's a Pu'u'o days where it's a giant hike out there. I mean, it's very accessible. So if you're looking for guided tours and a little bit something more personalized, check out Kalani Tours out of Kona. All right. We also are brought to you by a grant from the Hawaii Community Foundation, and we'd like to thank them for their continued support. And I think with that, we can jump into some questions, yeah?
Yeah, and the county of Hawaii as well, Mahalo County.
Right. All right. Don't have that many. The first one was about VOG in Kona from Christina, and she was saying that the VOG has lessened up quite a bit. But last week there was an influx, and was curious what your thoughts on that was. Was that due to the fountains?
Yeah, possibly. I'm not sure. I really don't have a good answer, Christina. I know you're our VOG watcher down there in South Kona. Mahalo. I really appreciate all the reports you give. I'm not sure if it was a change in the wind direction, change in the output. You know, it would be awesome if we had like a monitor pointing at that vent where we actually had data every 15 minutes of the gas. Then I could really answer a question and be like, look, clearly it went up. And that's something that the USGS was working on in the past when it was a more steady output. So when it was easier to measure. So maybe someday we'll get that. I don't know that I have an answer though exactly whether the output changed or not. You know, I see evidence of gas pistoning, I think. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were a couple little extra gas pulses mixed in there. Yeah, it's a good
All right.
Good hypothesis.
Question from James on Facebook asks, any estimate on how long you think this current eruption may last?
Anything anyone says is a guess, right? You know, I'm just kind of guessing. My guess, my gut, based on the last eruption, is that it looks like the last eruption where it didn't tail off for a few months. And at this point, I don't see any sign that that's going to change. You know, and this one seemed like it started off a little bit more vigorously because it had to build up enough pressure to come up through the last one, right through that whole old lava lake and fountain through that as well. So, you know, maybe that extra oomph it had at the beginning, it spent it at the beginning as well, and net effect is a longer, drawn out few months until we have some subsurface change once again. You know. Yeah.
So this was one question I ended up having.
Well, hold on, Dane. Hold on, Dane. You're the betting man here. How long do you think it's going to last?
What is it now? I'd say February. February, sometime in February would be my guess. That's where I'd throw a little bit of money down if I had to pick one. Just right now, it doesn't look like it's about to tail off anytime soon, and we know that. I mean, the last one surprised us how long it went. So just try and get in that range somewhere.
All right, so we'll see. We can take a poll, you guys. Who think it's going to last till I mean, Halloween's in a few days, right? So it'll definitely last till that. Who thinks it'll last till Thanksgiving? Who thinks it'll last till New Year's? Who thinks it'll last till Valentine's Day in February, like Dane? All right, so let us know what you think.
Okay, then this one kind of ties into it as well, right? So would we consider it a pause if the activity at the surface were to stop, right? We say the lava level rises and that cone stops rising with it or whatever, and we just don't get any surface activity. However, we're pretty sure that it's still erupting underneath that cap, right? And that cap is just rising with it. Is that considered a pause? Right, as the eruption paused in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down, comes down to really the lingo and terminology. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to be a stickler about it, you could be like, okay, if there's nothing red actually moving on the surface, it's a pause. And I don't care what else is going on. That could be your attitude.
Right.
In which case, you'd have to call it an intrusion, I guess. Right, it'd be intruding beneath that few meters thick crust. So,
but every time you get one of those ooze outs. Every time you get one of those ooze outs, like, oh, the eruption resumed. Oh, never mind. Okay, it's back to paused. Restart the clock.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as everyone listening probably knows, I've got much more of a gray zones and everything. I'm more interested in the process than rather than the exact term of it, But yeah, because lava's coming out, erupting into the lava lake that's technically underneath the crust underground, right? So the lava that comes into the lake it's not lava, it's magma, because it never actually got to the surface. Technically speaking, it's still underground. So it never became lava, it's still magma. Right. So you get a mix of magma and lava coming in. I don't say that I'm not saying, oh, our magma and lava eruption. So I'm just generalizing myself and calling it all lava, and I definitely have a lot of gray zone myself. So I would probably say, yeah, it's still going with no surface lava.
Right. We've had issues with bets on an eruption ending and then some little thing happening and being like, oh, does that count or no? Like, because that changes the bet outcome. Like,
good point.
Tiny thing that's inconsequential to the entire eruption, but it's like, oh, but if we're betting on it, now it matters.
Yeah, then the details matter. Yeah, very specific criteria required for those kind of wagers.
All right. Well, I believe that is all the questions we have for this part, and we will be taking more for the next one. Okay, Christina asked, can you summarize what the other eruption, the 2020 eruption that went into 2021 did when it wound down, and what those signs that it's taking that similar path may be?
So there wasn't a whole lot that you could see that was obvious. The gas wound down slowly. Those last couple of weeks, the gases were down below 1,000 tons per day. Right, so that when it's down to the hundreds, we're thinking, okay, like really, it's down in the hundreds. Like, how long can it actually hold on with gas coming out in the hundreds? But it took a while for it to peter down from 4,000 to 3,000 to 2,000 to 1,000 to get below that. So that's something that we saw towards the tail ends of it, and we saw lava coming up through the lava lake as well, right? Towards the end of the last eruption. The last eruption seemed like it had a lot to do with the vent locations and lava coming out of the vent. Like, there wasn't as much pressure below, and it was more just trickling, oozing out the whole final form, everything but the first week of it. Right, so it's a little different in that way. But as a vent drowns and we see how much lava is fountaining up through that lava lake, that's probably another indicator. You know, once we saw like the end of the dome fountains by the entry point of the last eruption, then that was the end was approaching as well. So we're still seeing lava bubble up through a ponded little area inside the cone right now, and so it seems like we're not anywhere near that situation right now, to the best of my estimate.
All right, well, that will do it for the first round of questions. We will be taking more and doing one more Q&A segment at the end after we go through some photos and finish that video on the 1 month compilation of the videos released by USGS.
Yeah, exactly. So let's switch to that right now here, and just making sure I get the right version up here, Dane. And so I got it on now. And this is a compilation Dane made of these videos over the last month to kind of look back at the progression. So we're starting off here with the views before the eruption and opening the fissures across the middle of the lava lake and on a western wall simultaneously. The west wall originally only had that one point zoomed in right there, right? That one, this is where the West Vent is today. But later on, it's going to expand north and south, as you see in this next image right there. Right? So you can see that the pressure was enough to burst out at higher and lower elevations here to the north. And that's something we saw bubbling up across the lava lake later on as well. So also in the southern area, across the floor of the crater, and through the previous lava lake that was there, right? And so we don't exactly know the dynamics underneath the lava lake, but it did come up through the lava lake. You can see the waves moving across the lava lake surface there, as the fountains just off screen and bottom left are erupting through not just this new lava that flooded out in the beginning, but also the lava that was still liquid underneath that crust. And so you had like a pond of lava, and then that old crust, and then a pond of lava below that. That was the case, right? And then over time, that crust rose up and then drained the lava off of its top, tilted itself over, and that's what we're looking at today. So daytime views from the helicopter here at a couple of days in, October 1st. You can see there not a whole lot of little islets and features in the near surface of the lava lake because the lava had flooded over top of all those islets before it drained back down as the thing tilted out. There are areas where you see lava fountaining through the lake there once again. Well, there's a bigger burst. The lake has been rising, but it rose mostly during that first week and a half or so as the last eruption as well. The fountains then started growing higher around that west vent and building up the cone itself, and the cone went through several growth spurts through that process. So that it actually started forming that horseshoe shape that has a little gap there in the bottom right, and that's pouring through that vent into the lava lake. That southern fountain continued for quite a while, so it was coming up through that lava lake still, and you can see pieces of that cone would fall in and act as barriers around that entry point of the lava. Meanwhile, I'm bringing you guys all this USGS data. USGS released this video of Dr. Matt Patrick performing his routine measurements, laser rangefinders from various locations, photographs and videos from various locations, essentially hiking around the rim, all the different points, measurement spots, and doing the rounds, data collection at each point. Right, that is reminiscent of the old days of Jagger as well, where they had those very specific measurement stations around the lava lake. They would walk around and measure, and walk around and measure, and walk around and measure. Eventually, at the end of the sequence with Jagger, they'd say, and so-and-so observation point got covered in lava. And so these guys are high up enough that that is not expected here. See webcams, maintaining webcams, solar panels, all that ash from previous explosions of the volcano several hundred years ago for the most part. That threw up not just the ash, but those other rocks you see scattered around. Blow with the wind and we'll cover those panels, so maintenance is needed. Could be the rain also washing things in, and you can imagine they're trying to install things non-permanently within a national park so that they're not doing damage to the landscape. And moving forward here, there is that West Vent fissure once again, pouring lava out to that little gap into the lava lake. You see that pattern on the crust. You see the higher bursts landing on the rim of the cone and building up the spatter cone there. There we go, burst, burst, burst. This is one of those bursts where quite a bit larger, you can see, compared to what we just showed you guys more recently. Not seeing as much of this action where it comes up and over and out and is really growing the cone substantially. All right, by the 12th, the lava lake has come up quite a bit. It's grown to 147 acres in size, and we think that that original west fissure that was extended along the wall was popping up in several spots through that cone and lava lake, as we talked about in the beginning of our segment today. So more recent overflight views in the daytime there. There's that eastern edge referenced, and back to the Wes Vent and Wes Vent Gap in the more recent days here. So I'm sorry, I said the 12th earlier, the 23rd and 24th is what I should have said there. Views of that spatter not quite reaching the top of the cone and spilling out, and we'll move here to the most recent satellite images released by USGS, Landsat 8, showing that new lava lake filling that pit, slightly expanding it there, right? Visible, infrared, and there is that. So Dane will be releasing this video in full tomorrow on a 1-month anniversary, so look for that. You guys can rewatch it and look for your favorite bits and comment on that there and share that and all that other good stuff as well. All right, so we will go through some of the photo and video here to finish things off. We're going to go back to the 25th, and you can see here's a view of that west vent and lava once again. Not a whole lot on the rim, and you can see no perched area in that particular photograph. It seems to be flowing pretty rapidly, like in a rapids form, right? A sloped channel down into this plunge point in the lava lake right in there. Okay, and they point out here that between this west vent and this old west vent island over here, there are portions of, here you can see the edge of a perched levee. So the levee perched pond area, this is area and the inside is higher than the outside, is a trench, a channel back over here between the main active lava lake and the crater wall. This is an area that has overflows across that perched area and might have ooze-ups, although and it's nearer to the vent area, we haven't seen any evidence of ooze-ups, perhaps because of the camera angles. It's hard to tell there. But certainly overflows are visible from that area there. And interesting how you have a little bit of it forming along the edge of this flatter part of this old West Vent Island as well, right? This is the thing we're recently seeing tipping in this direction, so this will be an interesting margin to keep our eyes on as this situation develops, small little minor changes there. And a wider view here of the lava lake. Let's zoom it out enough so you can see the whole thing. West Vent, Central Island, old West Vent Island there. And there's that levee we're looking at right in there just a second ago. And here's that interesting junction point that I like to explore a little more. So let's open this here and let's go in more. Let's go in more. There we go. So now you can see, zoom in a little better. It seems to almost be a perched channel or perched edge forming between the central island and this old West Vent Island, somewhere right in here, where you see several spillover points occurring there, right? But it seems to be some kind of sticking area right in there. And then beyond that, you see there's that big rock and this big, or two pinball paddles I was referring to earlier, one there and one there. And then eventually this thing rises out of the lake and blocks it off, and by now we have a solid barrier across the whole edge there, right? But you might notice here that there's also perched levee there as well, so that's why you see this thing spilling over and occasionally flooding. This is that ponded area, right, that you might call, I don't know what you call that, the Northwest Pond maybe, if you were to follow some historical patterns, something like that. Back here, Northwest Pond. All right, so that's that overall view, and we can see here in the back all these old islets that were flooded early on in eruption, but then the lava drained back off of them, and you can see they're now sticking out about that area. Interesting to see this area of cracking right through here, right? Cracking all through there and there, and this is an area Where am I looking? I need to zoom this out a little bit so I can tell where I'm looking. But yeah, this area right in here is the one we've seen spread apart, and we've seen chunks of this edifice drift over into the lava lake area over here. So we have seen evidence of lava coming up. This is where we saw that splitting in a thermal image we put out in our last update right there. In that area, you can see cracking. Interesting to see that's likely still going on. So I wouldn't be surprised, to see lava leak out of somewhere around here at some point. And it wouldn't be a huge shock, seeing as you see it lifting up and cracking in that area. And we know it's liquid underneath. So there's a nice view. You can see there's a little bit of that perched margin on that southern side as well, and that main overflow that seems to be active, and with that south pond over there that taking all the overflow and overturning all of that. Right? That's the wide angle view there. So no, back. All right. So back to here, and we should do a video. It was very similar to this view, so we'll just come back after there. So, but you really can see that perched lava up in a vent right in there. 23rd, similar view. The lava is spilling out, but it's also landing a big chunk of spatter and flowing out on the side over here as well. Wider angle view here, nighttime. Maybe I should click through to these so you guys can have a benefit of those and better resolution as well, since somehow the thumbnails aren't coming up very well. Too close. Right there. Lava coming out of the vent and spattering, landing in the rim. A little bit better resolution there for you guys. And this one as well. There it comes. There it is. So only because this is a very nice sunset image here, I'll make sure to share that with you guys. Nice visuals of eruption to remember when we look back on this in the future. Lots of fume all around the edges. You guys have noticed that all the fuming spots in the middle are much more subdued. And in our B1 animation, you saw that as we covered the lower parts of cracks with lava, then the gas comes out farther upslope. And so you see all the steam vents that we saw before along the crater walls are all now pushed out to the edge of the lava lake and concentrated along the margins there and there. Okay, so let's close that one and come back over here and look at the 22nd. Some more spatter. You get a little bit better view of this rapids right in there. West Bend fountains were measured at up to 75 feet in this image here, 23 meters, around 2 p.m. on the 22nd. It's 6 days ago now. So we'll move forward in time here. And let's see, we looked at that one already. And we just looked at that one already as well too, yeah. And so in this one you actually can see in this bottom corner one of these spillovers. It looks like, I'm not quite sure here if this is a spillover that came out this way, right? And one way that I like to tell, and maybe I'll click through so you can tell a little better what I'm looking at, is the way that the coils face, right? So when you look at the coils of Pahoehoe, the coil this way, that means this flow went that direction. When we pan over here, you see coils going this way, and flow in that direction. So this is the source of our overflow right in here. It spilled over right through there, right? But it's possible that this is something we saw in the thermocline before, but it looked like in the previous one, like it may have been popping out from here, but I suppose it could have been overflowing and looping around into camera view, something like that as well. So keep an eye on that when photographs in the future here. Okay, so move to the 26th now. All right, 26. Not as easy to see, but still the perched lava within the vent, and maybe a little easier to see the steepness of this lava drop right through here. on the 25th. And then there are the videos, which we've shown you guys those clips of already. So we'll move on to the 28th. Today's update, lava update here, and there was only one image earlier. Let's see if there's any more up. No, just this one from yesterday, and we'll click through it so you can get a better view of this lava perched up in here. And now it's actually forming a little ledge overhanging it. And a little bit of spatter coming up over the edge over here on the side. There it is. And the spill point not as easily viewable. So if you go to Hawaii Tracker, you can see videos from Kīlauea Overlook that face this entry point, which you can see a lot better from the public overlook, in fact. And the people with really big lenses have been targeting this entry point. So I'm sure we have a video by Janice, maybe, Dane, on there, I think I saw. I'll have to look for that at some point.
Yeah.
Came out through the park.
There's some really good ones from that angle.
So yeah, that's the last image we have here. There is a volcano watch that was issued today. And the volcano watch today is, how high is a lava fountain? And it's actually a rhetorical question. There's not an answer given exactly in here. It's just more about, how do you find out how high is that lava fountain? And they give...
The answer is maths.
Yeah, math. And yeah, here's a little geometry diagram to aid in your math, right, of the things you might actually look at, and you get some instructions here. So the idea being, you can go to the Kīlauea Overlook and look at the fountains and estimate the height of them if you bring the right kind of equipment to measure those distances. Yeah, angles and distances. So the easier way is you can estimate the height knowing the spatter cone is about 20 to 25 meters, 65 to 80 feet high. Right, that's my usual method since I'm sitting in a computer here, looking at all these different images. So check that out if you want to get the math of how to measure the lava fountain and how the geologists do it with their much better gear than probably most of us have.
Oh, come on. I'm sure they're just using a cell phone and just a zoom lens attachment.
You probably could. You probably could. You have a larger margin of error,
actually.
But you probably could.
All right. Well, I got that. The Volcano Watch is posted on Hawaii Tracker. Anybody wants to go check it out, it is up on there as the most recent article.
We could just go over the webcams. One last view of the webcam coming through here. Let me reload it since it's just falling dark here, and let's see what these views come out. S1 camera.
It's kind of the best time to look.
Yeah, B1 camera is not really showing sensitivity yet. KW camera. KW camera. Let me pop this one open here, because that back corner where the overflows are likely to occur it's looking active still. So let's click through to that one, and just to show you guys there that those are those little ooze ups. Our spillover point is probably right in here, somewhere right in here. It looks like maybe there's a little ooze up right there. There's a stronger one there and a stronger one there. So the whole thing is still rising, and we'll see when that actually does anything interesting. It's going to be doing a very small area, and in a slightly bigger area, and in a slightly bigger area, and a slightly bigger area, and it's going to be like a tease for a while there. So, but as we are tantalized, we'll keep an eye on this tiny little spot of glow in that little corner over there. And scrolling down, there've been some great views from other areas. This is too dark to see in that view, right? But you can see from Uikahuna, from Mauna Loa Road. It's down here as well. Some great photographs taken from there as well. Right, everything else looking dark. So yeah, that's it. Make sure you check out the Facebook group if you have not, because a lot of our members will post things on there, right? Rather than on our website, hawaiitracker.com, where we make sure that we have all of our in-house content posted for you guys to see. So there it is. All right, Dane, let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, let's see if we got any more questions coming through. There was. So while Bill asks, while the lava is flowing from the vent, are there any seismic signals associated with that, like a harmonic tremor?
Yeah, I mean there is tremor for sure, and I haven't. It's just so standard that I barely mention it for the most part, right? You know, the regular tremor that you have with every eruption that has lava effusing from its vent, lava and gas especially. Yeah, so there certainly still is tremor. I haven't pointed it out, but thanks for pointing that out.
Well, we don't really have any more questions lined up. It doesn't. If anybody has one, I will be looking in all the chats.
Yeah, make sure you like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, like, share, and subscribe. We will be back next week. This is our regular time for our volcano updates. It's Thursday at 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time.
I see Stephen Burrows has a comment about measuring height by counting seconds of time as well. Yeah, that also can work. I mean, one of the real issues we have with this vent is like now you can't see the bottom of the fountain because it's underneath a lava lake and behind the spatter cone and all that. Right. So if it can't fall all the way back down, we're going to have similar issues as we're going to have trying to measure the bottom of that vent with some kind of sighting view. So a little tricky, and why I usually resort to the estimates of the cone height right there.
Bill has a. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Bill has a question about if there's anything happening on Mauna Loa.
Mauna Loa hasn't really. I mean, it's maybe slightly moving faster than before, but it was moving hardly at all. So it's kind of still just lurching along, if anything at all. And we'll make sure to cover Mauna Loa in more detail at some point and reveal the signals. But there's really not a whole lot to show you guys there. It would be pretty short and boring at this point, and we can do short and boring maybe next week. Mauna Loa, just to make sure we cover the bases once again.
Right.
Questions about tidal effects, right? Tidal effects are something that can occur in like an open system, but the forces of the lava shooting out through the lava lake and all that is, the surges and the pulses and the gas pistoning is all way larger than those kind of signals, right? So that's the issue with trying to detect that kind of thing. But yeah, tidal forces do exist. So I'm going to throw that out there again. We do have those questions a lot. The tidal forces, generally speaking, are much, much smaller than the forces of the volcano. So they usually are not noticeable unless it's really quiet still, like not really doing anything and nothing's moving, which it doesn't do.
All right. Well, we will be premiering the 1-month anniversary compilation of footage from the 2021 eruption of Kilauea tomorrow. So check that out. Check out hawaiitracker.com for the latest posts. We just posted the volcano watch from the USGS there. And we will be posting, of course, that compilation there as well. So check us out on all those channels, and also the Facebook group, which is going to become the meta group eventually. I don't know how that's going to work, but we'll see what happens, huh?
We're just going to ride the wave and go with the flow.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll pass it back to you, Phil. Thank you.
All right, mahalo Dane, mahalo everyone who liked, shared, and subscribed, and you still have time to do that here as we wrap it up. Mahalo all you guys who contributed to us with donations. We'll make sure that we read through some names next time. And until next time, unless something drastically changes, we'll be back with you guys at the same time next week, 5 p.m. Hawaiian time on Thursday. And until then, he's Dane DuPont. I'm Philip Ong from Hawaii Tracker. Aloha, everyone.